All right, let's go ahead and we'll call the meeting to order at this point. If we can, Officer Ortiz, if you'll do the roll call for us.
Alrighty. OHV Advisory Board Chairman Alcon.
Present.
OHV Advisory Board Vice Chairman Henry.
I'm here.
OHV Advisory Board Member Montjoy. OHV Advisory Board Member Chacon. OHV Advisory Board Member Diamond. OHV Advisory Board Member Jones. Did somebody say something? OHV Advisory Board Member Dr. Daly.
Okay. Hold on
That's all
just a
we got.
second.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, I was just trying to get my screen where I could see everybody, but that may not be possible with the way you've got it set up.
I believe John Monjoy is trying to connect.
Okay, we'll wait just one moment then.
Chairman Alcon, I know agenda item number 3, we normally have an introduction of guests, but having this virtual platform, if somebody wants to raise their hand virtually, I would ask that we just kind of go into the next agenda item as soon as you're ready.
Okay. I did see through the YouTube stream that Ron Schubert was joining, so welcome, Ron. And
Hey, Ron.
Previous board
Hey,
member.
Ron.
And at this point, we'll add additional members if they happen to get connected. Actually, you said Montjoy, you said is trying to get on.
I saw his name briefly.
Okay. At this point, we'll go ahead and move on to agenda item number 4, and I'll turn the floor over to you, Matt.
Thank you, Chairman Alcon. For those of you who don't know me, I am Matthew Seidel, New Mexico Department of Game and Fish Off-Highway Vehicle Program Manager. I'm going to be the main presenter today. If you have any questions, let us know. My staff and I are available to answer it. But to jump right in, right now, it took to the end of September to what we would consider to have a full fiscal year cash balance budget. Excuse me. Whenever July 1 happened and we were looking for fiscal year budget, we were a little lower at our target because normally we get about $795,100 that we normally get for our budget. It took to the end of September to actually get just a little over 822,000. So now we are fully functional, if you will. Looking at the data from July and August, we had a total revenue stream put into the Child Safety Fund of just a little over $106,000, which is about 60 grand less than this time last year for the same time frame. So this is a 50% legislative year, meaning we cannot spend more than 50% of our budget before January, which we are currently in a COVID year, which means a lot of us are teleworking from home and a lot of vehicles are not being used, oil, gas, stuff like that. So salaries are definitely being paid out of that 200 category at the end of September. We only spent almost $66,000 for staff pay, overtime, MOUs, per diem, stuff like that, fleet maintenance. We did the grants this year. I know that we had talkings last December of having the advisory board as well as Game and Fish sit down and kind of award the grants, but with COVID and the mandate, social distancing, et cetera, and they, the governor shut down our offices there at the beginning of March. Makes it hard to kind of sit at a table together and kind of hash through these. So my staff and I went through the grants, and we actually awarded a handful of them, total of just a little over $36,000. Los Lunas was able to grab a couple of the grants, and then Cliffhangers out of the Farmington area, which is an organization, grabbed one of the grants. And then there was a law enforcement pay grant that was issued to, was it Luna County?
Correct.
Luna County. And that's the one where they do OHV patrols. But we did reach out to a lot of BLM, Forest Service, other law enforcement agencies, because we did notice that the grants were a little thin, but with COVID-19, a lot of them just didn't have time to actually submit a grant this year. Just so you know, some of our activities since the last meeting in December, we did have the Outdoor Adventure Show at Expo New Mexico for that weekend, 3-day weekend. We were able to meet a lot of our public and talk face-to-face with them. And there was quite a few people that attended that. We talked quite a lot. The end of February, all staff and as well as myself attended the Archeries in the Schools state tournament at the Albuquerque Convention Center, which was a great turnout as always, and a lot of arrows were flung and nobody injured again. So it can be done. John Marsh and them do a really good job with that event. March, I had the Safety Sarah and Safety Sam trailers wrapped that shows them actually on the trailer. So when you're pulling it down the highway, there's a trailer of Safety Sarah, Safety Sam robots within or on their trailers. So those look pretty nice. March 10th, that's like I was saying earlier, the office staff were sent home due to COVID-19. Some of us were. March 16th was kind of the first full week of teleworking from home for everybody. We did buy a whole new fleet of ATVs. This is training ATVs. And by this purchase, we were allowed to kind of farm out some of the older ATVs to Los Lunas Open Space, who are recognized instructors for us that actually do quite a bit of trainings. So we recognized that they could have their own fleet and they could do their own trainings down there. And they were more than excited to receive some of those machines. On April 28th is when we had the grant reviews. And like I said, 5 were submitted, 4 were approved. And Cliffhangers, they're actually doing, their club are wanting to build signs, OHV signs that they're going to put on that BLM property, the Glade up there. So they have a really good working relationship with that BLM property. And as you know, we spent a lot of capital outlay dollars up there in the last few years. So it's still going back to that project, which is a good thing to see. Please know that our grant system was advertised for a longer period. We did start them mid-December and we ran them all the way through to the end of March. But like I said, with everything going on with COVID and shutdowns and just the pandemic stresses, we didn't have very many people apply this year, even though we did reach out to several of them, even past applicants. It just is we received what we received. Please know that I did ask to purchase a toy hauler for last fiscal year's budget. These are this toy hauler is an actual trailer that you could pull behind a truck. In a lot of the remote areas that we have our safety trainings, or Desi may be doing a law enforcement effort over a weekend, they can actually live out of the safety trailer, as well as have a side-by-side or a couple of ATVs in there to do whatever they need to do. And Desi is actually the first one that got to use it. Is a fairly nice one, and I'm a little jealous of that, but We do have a toy hauler as part of our fleet now. I don't know if you've known or not, but a lot of the media, a lot of the stuff that I've looked on the internet and word of mouth is there has been a large increase in OHV purchases and uses. Chris Johnson also was a good outlet for a lot of this information. But with this increase, there's also been an increase of illegal use of OHVs in both urban and rural settings. I've started a media effort with Chris Johnson and Desi. We've been trying to write as many safety articles posted to our webpage and our social media accounts through the New Mexico Department of Game and Fish. I've investigated potential use of digital advertisements from a couple different avenues, as well as maybe purchasing some commercials to get the OHV safety message out there, because we're getting pictures or phone calls or email messages of everything from, you know, a mom with 5 kids on an ATV on some Forest Service road to some of the other accidents and stuff that I'll be covering a little bit later in the presentation. But with all this information since the start of the shutdown and the increased use, all OHV law enforcement patrols have been increased throughout New Mexico, and that's both whether it's in the city of Santa Fe or city of Rio Rancho, out in the Forest Service areas and the BLM areas. It's been this kind of a blanket approach of increasing the law enforcement effort. Now, going to the OHV accidents and injury reportings, unfortunately, a lot of what we get is word of mouth, what we find in the newspaper, off the news, or working with law enforcement. So far, I've been able to track this year 17 OHV accidents that we know about. I'm sure there may be a lot more than this, but 17 is what I can prove. And it was reported that, you know, any minor injuries like bruises or broken bones to brain injuries, there was an arm amputation, you know, the life-threatening type injuries and a couple of deaths. And like I said, this information is coming either from a media source, whether we got an article, saw it on the news, or law enforcement officers, not only with Game and Fish, but state police. Please know 11 of the 17 accidents were paved road accidents. 3 of the accidents were fatalities on dirt or graveled roads where they lost control or ran off the road and wrecked, fell into a canyon or wrecked into a mine. 2 of the accidents were fatalities on pavement. So on the law enforcement front, when it comes to patrols or hands-on training or training of the OHV Act to other first responders, actually Officer Ortiz has been essential with everyone teleworking from home. He's one of the employees that has to be out on patrol for OHVs, and so he has a little bit more freedom. So he's been relied heavily from several people to kind of go around and make purchases or meet drivers or pick up shipments wherever he's needed. So he fits that into his schedule, and we really do appreciate him because we've been keeping him very busy, especially since everyone's kind of been staying home with the shutdown and teleworking. He has recertified the instructors training, recertified instructor with DPS. He filled out the application and qualified to be an instructor through the Department of Public Safety up in Santa Fe. He's also, during all his travels, we've been asked for a lot of signage, like the Carson National Forest up in El Rito, Fort Sumner, Red River. So he's been delivering signages, OHV signages to a lot of those localities, as well as brochures. We just updated our OHV brochure and made a purchase. So he's been trying to get our brochures out there to everybody especially in the Taos Red River area as he goes. He was able to teach the Debaca County Sheriff's Department and their 6 officers the OHV Act. And he was able to teach at 2 state police academies classes for about 60 cadets total for his efforts on that. So he's still able to go out and reach people during this shutdown. And he was also up at the San Juan Academy fairly recently, and he taught 15 of their cadets up in the San Juan area. He's been able to do the hands-on ROV class, the side-by-side classes, was given to 5 DOE personnel. Then he was also going to the Basic Police Academy, where he had 62 cadets taught. He's been with Los Lunas Fire Department. He was able to get 2 of their personnel hands-on ATV training. And then City of Elephant Butte Fire Department, he had 3 employees doing the side-by-side training course. So Daisy's been pretty busy, and I sure do appreciate all of his efforts. On the education side of things, since COVID-19 has hit, we have not been able to do a lot of the public displays or the face-to-face interactions with our hands-on training. That's taken a little bit of the hit. So we had to cancel them due to the pandemic. To date, 6 hands-on ATV and ROV classes have been offered and completed. And these have been for the first responders, just because we cannot have those public classes. The first responders that are higher level, they need the information, they need that type of certification. Plus, they are a first responder, and all governor mandates have been followed for these type of classes. Social distancing, wearing masks, washing of hands, all that good stuff. The online education has been going pretty well. So far to date, 456 students have completed the online training, and breaks out to about 351 students are doing the off-road education ATV classes. 105 students did the snowmobile. Now the snowmobile data links back to the good snow season that we had January, February, and March. And so that's where you see that major amount of numbers happening. So that's not anything fairly recent, but that does go off of the calendar year of 2020, January through December. But if you look at last year's statistics, calendar year of 2019, we had a total of 526 students take the online training. And right now, since we have the 456, if it keeps on going the rate that it is, we should surpass last year's online totals. Other outreach events that were on the calendar, like the MOVA rides, all have been canceled due to COVID. And before the shutdown, Safety Sam, which was gaining a lot of traction, a lot of popularity, the word was getting out. Everybody wanted Safety Sam or Safety Sarah in their classes. We were able to visit 2 schools and 1 dealer, reaching about 215 people with the Safety Sam. And I appreciate Chris's efforts on that. He's taken the lead on Safety Sam and Safety Sarah when it comes to those presentations. And the kids, it's a great response from the kids. They really get involved, and we really grab their interest. Well, depending on the age of the younger kids, always say that the robot looks spooky when they try to look in the eyes. And that's it in a nutshell. Do you have any questions, any concerns?
Hey, Matt, this is John Montjoy. Sorry getting a little bit late into the meeting. Can you hear me?
Hey, John, how's it going?
Oh, pretty good, pretty good. Appreciate all the update information. Sorry I can't figure out on my son's computer how to get into the Zoom meeting. I'm putting in the number, but anyways, I got in off regular landline. But anywho, in regards to your crashes, I did have a question. Is there any common denominator or location You said there was 17. Is there one particular part of the state that's a little bit hotter than the others? Just curious.
No, it's spread throughout because a lot of this information we hear from Taos, we hear from Albuquerque is one of the fatalities that happened here. A kiddo was out it was like in the evening driving on paved roads, just left their house, ended up wrecking. So there's really no, I mean, other than, there's not a real pattern. I'd also ask for Desi Ortiz for his opinion, but I really can't see one because it's just spread out different times.
Okay.
I mean, a lot of the paved road stuff, 11 of the 17 accidents on paved roads, that's just, you never heard of that before. And I think that has to do with people's interpretation of that pavement law. But Officer Ortiz?
Yeah, I would say speed is a contributing factor in a lot of these incidents where, people were to slow down, they would be able to see a hole or that there's an arroyo accident. There was a few coming out of Eunice there where it was just, kids were on pavement and they just collided with a vehicle. Kids are not allowed to be on pavement down there. Just kind of simple stuff of breaking the law and inattentive operators.
Great, thanks. Yeah, I just didn't know if there was anything common or not. But anywho, glad you guys are on top of it.
Oh yeah.
Okay, any other questions?
Chris Johnson here, Matt and Mr. Chairman, if I can weigh in briefly on that. One thing that most of those accidents have in common is that they were doing the warned against activities on ATVs or on OHVs, operating without helmets, kids operating with passengers, things like that. So a lot of those accidents were very preventable.
Okay. All righty. Any other questions or comments? Okay, I have a couple. In regards to the Glade, Matt, were you guys involved when the secretary came out from the BLM and toured that facility here just recently?
No, we didn't even know about it.
So there was a pretty decent press release today or in the last couple of days by the Motorcycle Industry Council or Novak. I can't remember. I get them all, but this one was probably MIC that said that kind of highlighted that area, highlighted the fact that there's a partnership out there, and evidently the secretary from Washington came out and actually toured the facility and was impressed with it and had positive comments in that press release. So again, good job for that. That's a pretty good example of what's going on or what model kind of stuff would happen across the country.
That's
So
awesome.
Good on that, and I would encourage you to kind of seek out that press release. As a dealer, I'll kind of weigh in on the purchase use kind of scenario that's happened during COVID. Been a pretty strong phenomenon in that while a lot of business have seen a lot of trouble and a lot of decrease in their economic activity, almost every business that involves staycation, stay-at-home kind of activity, local outdoor use has seen a pretty substantial uptick in participation levels and purchases. So that includes everything from bicycles to RVs to boats to motorcycles and obviously the side-by-sides and ATVs. So there was a tremendous pull forward of a lot of sales that happened into shortly after the start of the pandemic, but long enough after before people kind of could go into dealerships and that kind of stuff. And so a lot of dealers had 300%, 400%, 500% increases in these segments that would be in the off-road world. Those numbers are going to normalize a little bit on an annualized kind of basis because they were about flat to slightly up leading into the pandemic. And then that tremendous pull forward of activity combined with the manufacturers being shut down created an extreme shortage in the supply chain situation. So while we have the demand currently in the industry for these products, the supply chain isn't there. So we'll be behind sales a little bit just simply because of the supply chain, and that'll kind of normalize out the year, although it will finish up for the whole year. But you should have seen a pretty significant spike in OHV registrations and trail fund, development, that kind of stuff in those months of probably late April, May, June kind of time frame, and really even into July. So when things shake out, don't hang your hat on those numbers as an annualized numbers, but understand they came from that tremendous spike in this situation.
Sure.
As long as the situation continues to be kind of enforced the way it is right now, we don't see much of a drop off in demand. If people can't travel, they can't go to Europe, they can't go on vacation, can't go to Disneyland, want to get the kids the heck out of the house. Our product and these kinds of products will continue to have strong demand. In that regard, I think it's important for us to maybe have, as a board, a better presence in the dealerships, and as a program, not as a board, as a program. Obviously, I'm probably as in tune with this whole process as anybody is, and I feel like there's not much information that would get to the consumer if it didn't really come through me and a couple of my key people. So I heard you say you've designed a new brochure. If that is really done and in production at this point, since we didn't use a lot of money on grant stuff this year, I would really push hard to develop a supply of those brochures and spend a substantial amount of extra effort to get those into every single dealership in the state that sells these OHV products. We find ourselves on a regular basis just writing down the www.b4uride.com on their buyer's invoice to try and drive them to somewhere where they can get more information. And I don't think that's an adequate way to really introduce somebody to this segment. Of those sales that were pulled forward, there was more new users than we normally would see. So those are even more critical to reach with the safety message, because they don't necessarily have a family member or somebody from a previous generation that's educating them on responsible use, on safe use, appropriate locations for use, that kind of stuff. So brochures is certainly one thing. You already have that product, it sounds like. Get them produced, get them into the hands of the dealership so we can give them out. Second, maybe there's additional products. MSF has posters that we can put up for their rider training course. Maybe we should have a poster that really can be a nice, not too big, 11 by 17 kind of max poster that could be in dealerships or places where people of these kinds of products would congregate, which would give them at least some basic information and tell them that there's a resource that they could get to through the website, to get that information. And there could be other things on top of that, but that's just two fairly quick, not real expensive ways that I think really need to happen, especially with all this influx of new operators. Kind of in that same regard, I could tell you that from our dealership, I have to really push hard to communicate what the white plate, concept is all about, the on-road plate for off-road vehicles. And, we start with the fact that, this does not make your vehicle street legal. It only makes it legal to operate on a road that's been allowed, OHVs have been allowed on. That's a pretty difficult conversation to get through when somebody's really excited and really, excited to get their new unit and get out, and they're getting a tremendous amount of disinformation from other users that may not know what the real rules are and stuff like that. out there in the marketplace, once this plate actually arrives 3 or 4 weeks into ownership. I don't know if there's a way that we could work with the Department of Motor Vehicle to potentially stuff the envelope of those white plates with the OHV brochure. That was one thing that I was thinking about, or some other OHV safety message. And whether it's in that white plate envelope and there's a little bit better dissemination of information on what that white plate really means. And then maybe with the OHV sticker, the registration sticker, which comes in a separate envelope, maybe that one has the current OHV brochure in it. I would look into that and see if there's some collaboration we could create with the motor vehicle department to make something like that happen. That would be one way to ensure that everybody, at least that registers a unit, gets that information. I just see us not doing a good job of getting that information in the hands of people that need it.
I will get with MVD and have a visit with them. Go ahead.
No, that's fine. So any questions on that part of that, what I've said, or comments? The next thing is that as to the hands-on training, and I don't know, Chris, or you, Chris, Matt might be able to kind of bring me up to speed. I know that for a period of time, the Motorcycle Safety Foundation courses were shut down, and they're kind of a quasi-government course. But for the last several months, they have been operational. And I'd like to know if you have a definitive ruling from the government or communication from the governor that would say those are acceptable and ours aren't, or if we've made that decision as a department, or why the disparity in the ability to have training for two-wheel motorcycles and not have training for the OHV product.
Matt, you want me to address that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, so we are under orders from the governor right now to stand down all the public classes. So we're operating in accordance with the Department of Health emergency order. Personally, I think that when the Department of Health and the governor decide that we can begin operating public classes, I think we can find a way to do that safely, but it's not going to look like the public classes that we were offering before. The numbers are going to be smaller because we also have to account for adults. Everybody's going to be spaced out. Everybody's going to be wearing protective gear all the time. It's not going to look like the same class, I don't think. I don't know how the MSF is actually running stuff here in New Mexico. I've seen some of their corporate communications about how they wanted to restart, but I don't know what's actually being done in New Mexico. I have spoken offline with a couple of folks that have been part of that program in the past, and frankly, they don't have a lot of confidence in the way things are being run right now. So I'm not going to go too much further into that, but let's just say that we serve different masters, and so the rules for how we operate are entirely different.
So, okay, I appreciate that explanation, Chris. I just, from my perspective, again, I see this as being such a strong part of our mission in this program is to get as much training as we can done. And I see that with the gear that we have, with the environment that we train in, that it wouldn't, to me, seem to be that difficult to create a very safe environment in a 4-hour window that would serve a extremely valuable and obvious purpose to the state. And that if we could come up with a proactive plan that expresses that information to the governor's office or to your chain of command through the director of the Game and Fish Department, to demonstrate that, for example, we could have kids and parents for that matter. You already issue them, I believe, protective headgear covering as it is. It sounds like you've come up with some sort of plan for the Los Lunas folks for some sort of facial covering. For a 4-hour period, quite frankly, you could mandate from the time they get out of the car to the time they get back in their car that they would be required to wear that PPE. And the distancing on the product itself is not a problem. And certainly, if you only have 6 parents there, you could have the ability to create spatial, distancing between those people. And I just think that the value is significant, giving the spike in particularly youth products being sold and the expansion of youth operation, that we should be petitioning for an exemption, if not the ability to open this back up. And that's my opinion. I think it could be done relatively cleanly, relatively safely, not put you, Chris, as an instructor at risk or other instructors at risk. And quite frankly, I don't see it as being that much different from what we've done before, because we've limited those youth classes, particularly youth classes, to generally 6 participants or less. So again, my opinion. Yeah.
I'm going to pipe in here on a couple of your points. I am efforting a large purchase of neck gaiters, which would follow the face mask mandate that the governor has. I think there would be little tweaks within our hands-on training that we would have to do to create a little bit better distancing. Obviously, those portions of the class where you're teaching maps and giving out a test and having them take a water break or a lunch break where they sit at a table, a lot of that is going to have to be tweaked a little bit for the social distancing aspect. But I think that's very easily controlled, even the parents. And if they don't follow those mandates, I thought about, giving them a warning. If parents are not following the mandates, giving them a warning and then asking them to leave. We always have that option. But until I get all those tools in line, then I can actually present something to my chain of command to hopefully petition an exemption, like you said. But right now, I just ordered 3,000 of those neck gaiters because they go well with riding OHVs.
And they're not limited to the pandemic. They could be used well beyond that.
Correct. And they also have safety messages on them and stuff. So I am working that way. I just haven't got there yet. I'm close, though. Very close.
Has the other side of your department, Hunter Ed, figured out a way to do kids youth stuff? Desi, you're shaking your head no?
They're doing youth hunts, and they have protocols and policies that they follow. Like if they're doing an antelope hunt or a cow elk hunt. So
that wasn't what I was specifically speaking to the hunter education program, where they get their hunter education certificate.
You can do that
not
online now.
It's all online. A lot of it's online.
Okay, I didn't know if you did any online, any in-person stuff on that. Okay, well, that's enough said on that. I just see this. I don't see a near end to this pandemic. I see it really potentially continuing all the way into next season. And while we've reacted the way we've reacted, everybody's trying to figure out ways to, what's the new normal? What can we do? What would make sense?
Sure.
And I think if we have a mission to as training as one of our primary, objectives, we need to be doing what we can proactively to try and figure out how to make that happen. And
Sure.
I don't know that while the online stuff is great, and I appreciate it, really is good that we had that in place going into
Right.
this.
Yes.
It's provided that opportunity. It's not the sum total of what we need to be offering.
Sure.
So,
And,
all right, that's basically the comments that I had.
And I like to kind of quickly revisit your MVD comment. I am going to get with MVD. I am going to talk with them, but also to let you know, whenever those permits, those sticker decals go out to each person that buys it, whether it's a regular registration or it's a part of their special paved road use vehicle plate, on the back page has a lot of great information about prohibited use, what is an OHV, OHVs on paved road use vehicle plate, and what is it for, and it gives a lot of the outline of what it is either in statute or regulation, much like what you see on the regular registration decal on what the registration is and the use of the permits, and it also has the prohibited uses and penalties and reporting violations and stuff. So some of that information's already there. It's been in place there for a while. If they would just flip the page, if you will.
Okay, that's the one piece of component. I don't see that piece. So that, because that goes directly from the state and bypasses us. As
I don't know if you guys can see that. It kind of looks like this.
Yeah.
Is that
Okay.
a port showing?
It's okay.
So it has a bunch of information on the back, but it is out there. And if I can add one new quick item, it would be brief.
Sure.
I just recently had a meeting with Espanola Public Safety over there. They're looking at trying to do an on pavement, OHVs on pavement ordinance there. Their biggest problem is they have several state roads and highways meanders through the whole city proper. So with their visit, they're definitely going to get with DOT and do an application to try to get special permissions in their ordinance to have access to a lot of the state roads and highways, which the statute would primarily be against. DOT has come out and said that if it is strictly for OHV recreation to open up a part of a state highway, that they would consider it. Otherwise, usually that answer is no. So they are going to make an application. There was a lot of talk about writing a letter to their representatives and their senators to open up the OHV Act and change that part of the law to where any city or county can make an ordinance without having to worry about if it's a state highway or state road. So you may see some legislation or some information come out on that. We'll see when that happens, but I just wanted to make you all aware of that.
Okay. Is there any, have you guys been in any discussion with Rio Rancho? I had heard that they were recently considering some stuff.
I've been in discussion with Rio Rancho for almost 2 years now. They seem very split. Their legal as well as their fire department and EMTs are adamantly opposed to any kind of ordinance. Their deputy mayor and their police, they're like, yeah, that's no problem. We can have an ordinance. So I haven't heard anything of them actually doing anything. I know that they've been trying to fight a lot of lawsuits recently for the illegal use of a side-by-side, and they hit a pothole and that person wrecks their side-by-side and is blaming the city of Rio Rancho for the wreck because they're not maintaining the roads. So that's some of the stuff that I've heard, but I haven't heard anything, anyone put anything to paper to really draw up an ordinance as of yet.
Okay. No problem. So I see agenda item number 5 up on the deal. I don't believe we have any public comment, but if there is, would you please acknowledge yourself and we'll go from there.
Raise your virtual hand.
Raise your virtual hand.
if they'll raise a hand or message us. Ron Schubert does. So Ron, I just allowed you to talk. You'll have to unmute yourself on your side.
Been a long time since I've seen everyone. Hello.
Hey, Ron, how's it going?
Doing fine. Haven't seen a lot of these faces for a long time, which could be a good thing, I guess. Frank Keene recently posted something on the Nemova Facebook page about Ojo Caliente Restoration Fundraiser. Is there any knowledge of that damage up by Ojo Caliente from law enforcement? And second, isn't the State Highway Commission only agrees to allow only side-by-sides when they make the rules, as example for Red River?
I can address part of that question.
Wow. Go ahead, Chris.
So the State Highway Transportation Commission is guided by a policy that they adopted with consultation of the Department of Transportation, and they only consider a ordinance for their equivalent, a resolution for side-by-sides. They do not consider for ATVs. I believe a special exception was made for the folks down in Glendale.
Correct.
But nowhere else has that special dispensation been given.
Yeah, and he's talking about the it's a CP71. It's the recreational off-highway vehicles on paved state highways. It's kind of a two-page definition, and hence you could do your application from that. But it specifically talks about ROVs. But Glenwood was an exception with the ATV side of it.
Back to the whole Caliente issue with that restoration fundraiser. Is there any knowledge of that from the damage from law enforcement?
In fact, I believe Desi's been up there a few times, not only with law enforcement, and they've actually done some roadblocks, but he could talk better to it than I can.
Mr. Chairman, good morning, Ron, or good afternoon, Ron. How are you?
Fine.
Good. Hey, so I was up there the last couple of weeks taking signage around. The officer out of El Rito and I were, we put up several signs around Canjilon and around El Rito. I didn't go to the Ojo Caliente side, but if it's what I'm thinking, it's kind of the same story all around the state with a lot of these new users who aren't familiar with travel management or a road. If they see a meadow that hasn't been touched, it's like, hey, me first. But I'm not too familiar with what's going on in Ojo. But like I said, if it's the same story going around, I can imagine the damage that's been caused.
Yes, I could almost agree with you, contributing a lot of the stuff. New users. Thank you.
There you are.
Thank you, Ron. Certainly it would be something that, we could keep our ear to the ground on and certainly reach out to some of those places in our next round of grant activity to maybe either do some more signage, restoration projects, etc. Just out of curiosity, you've mentioned signage several different times. Is there a single consistent sign that you've been distributing around, or is it some unique pieces to different places, or what does that look like, Desi?
Mr. Chairman, so what we're giving out is all basic sign, and same one we take all around the state. It's I believe it's 11 by 17, and it says all off-highway vehicles must be registered in accordance with New Mexico state law, and it gives our statute. And then the other sign that we give is all off-highway vehicle operators under the age of 18 must wear safety gear, or I don't know if it says safety gear or helmet and goggles, but it talks about safety gear. Then it gives a statute there. So those are the two easiest ones we can give out, and the ones that, kind of are our biggest violators: no safety equipment and no registration. So yeah, those are what we put up at all, or not all. I mean, we have a limited amount, but we're putting them up. So when you go through El Rito, and I can't remember, I think it was 110, State Road 110. We put it there as you exit the pavement onto dirt right before you get to the El Rito campgrounds. We have them on either side. And then there's a forest road that goes from El Rito to Canjilon, Forest Road 137, and we put it right there along the Forest Service signs that have been shot up. So we put it as you enter. In Canjilon, we put it as you're getting into the forest when you go through the village of Canjilon, you start making your way up. We put them up there. And I think me and Matt were discussing getting some smaller, no OHV or OHV prohibited signs for a lot of those places that have user created trails that the Forest Service doesn't have. Oh, go ahead.
Are these standalone type signs, or are they weather resistant signs that you put on a kiosk, or what does the sign physically look like?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, they're reflective, 11 by 17, a metal, either metal or aluminum. I believe they're aluminum. They've got the reflective surface. They're white with black lettering. They're pretty visible. It'd be hard to
As a post you drive into the ground or something.
So what the Forest Service was able to do out of the Carson or out of El Rito, they gave us a couple of posts. Not the T, but they're another type of metal post. You drive them in. We put them on those, and then we also put them on the existing wooden posts that have the Forest Service entering Forest Service land, or what the case was.
Okay. All right. Thanks for that clarification.
Mr. Chairman, Matt Seidel.
Yep.
I also have Desi, he's working on purchasing several more signs, some with pictures on it, no OHV use and stuff like that. So we could kind of expand that and get more signage out there, especially if we have more of a shutdown and more people going out riding. I have had several phone calls as of recently, surprisingly, that people complaining about all the OHV, ATV side-by-side use in the Forest Service. Of course, this time of year, a lot of those cattlemen are trying to find their cattle and get them off of there, but they feel like some people are using that as an opportunity to follow the tracks all over the pastures and the hillsides. So I want to visit with Forest Service to see if maybe we could come to some kind of agreement or understanding on that, because it's creating another issue, because a lot of other people are seeing these people doing it and they don't put two and two together, I guess. But that's been an interesting as of late eye-opening kind of situation.
Okay. All right. Any other public comment? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on. Basically, adjournment. Matt, you had created a second meeting. You want to inform us about that? Is that finalized yet at this point, or
yes, sir.
Send that information out?
In fact, it's going to be December 16th. We'll do another notice and send out an email to everybody, and with more than likely it will be virtually. With the email invite, they'll also have that little hot cell that you could click into to join, much like this one. So mark your calendars. It will be Wednesday, December 16th at 6 p.m.
Okay. And you'll send out notices and Zoom links at that point. All right. Well,
Yes,
thank
sir.
you for setting this up, Matt and the team, for your report. If there's no other comments, I will call the meeting adjourned.